Hey there, everyone. Ervin here with a breakdown for the recently released SG-451 Cookout in Helldivers 2. The Freedom's Flame Warbond is here to turn up the heat on the enemy after a rather cold reception for the Escalation of Freedom update by the community. Question is, will it be enough to warm the hearts of the community's Incinerary Breaker enthusiasts after being left out in the cold? Well, let's take a look at the weapon's technical specifications, damage breakpoints, and target effectiveness to find out. As is the case with all of my breakdowns, all thoughts on viability and testing is based on and performed on difficulty not for the first time ever, difficulty 10 Super Helldive, giving you the most accurate information on how these weapons hold up in the super endgame. Alrighty, getting into the meat of the mechanics behind the cookout, we are looking at a one-to-one mirror for most of the technical specifications of the weapon with the Slugger and the Punisher. As just like these two weapons, this shotgun is a shell-loaded pump action. Unlike those two weapons, however, it has one of the meanest sound designs I have ever heard since the autocannon let freedom ring in my ears for the first time. Listen to how good this thing sounds for a second. Now, if that doesn't sound like freedom, I don't know what does. Anyway, this shotgun has a fire rate of 80 RPM, and just like the other two pump action shotguns, the pumping animation can be skipped and canceled with no downsides, as it only serves as a visual flare, not actually being required to fire the next shell. This means you can reload shells in between each shot you fire to invalidate the reload speed and maintain a constant stream of, well, fire. That reload speed being zero point 0.8 seconds per shell, not that it matters in particular, as this baby just keeps burning and burning all the way through its maximum capacity of 60 shells with 17 starting in the chamber. So, full marks for reload speed on account of there effectively not being any for the most part. Recoil wise, the Cookout has 20 less points of recoil than both the Slugger and Punisher, with better ergonomics than both of these weapons, as well sporting less drag. Not that any of these three weapons have a hard time whatsoever getting on target. The swivel speed is snappy, responsive, and will not let you get caught lacking when hunters creep up from behind you and you need to get on target quickly. The first person side of the weapon, I'm sure, is fine and probably looks the exact same way that the Punisher's non variable red dot does, but if I'm being completely honest, it didn't occur to me to look a single time while utilizing the weapon, as it is very much a terminid weapon and very much a shotgun. So, third person aiming and spatial awareness will likely be how everyone utilizes this weapon, as there is virtually no benefit to using the first person toggle with something like this. In fact, hip firing will likely be a much more common consideration there, as there are very few downsides, if any, for doing so with how the pellets spread over a pretty significant area and light up the area that they're going to, allowing you to adjust accordingly. The effective range of the cookout finds itself somewhere between the Incinerary Breaker and the Punisher, spreading more than the Punisher, but less than the spraying and praying Incinerary Breaker. Typically, you'll be able to land all of your pellets onto any specific terminids within 20 meters, but will see a dramatic scattering and lack of ability to focus your fire on anything further than that, requiring you to get a bit closer to be fully effective than the Punisher would, but not as close as the Incinerate Breaker. This is completely fine though when we get into the damage over time effect. The cookout, of course, causes the burning status effect on all enemies it hits. Even if only one of your 20 pellets strike the target, they will burn for 2.4 seconds, taking a total of 134 fire damage to their main health pool. Now, an important thing to note about this is that the main health pool for all enemies is their body. This means if you are striking any enemy in the head or limbs, you are splitting the damage that you're doing, as only variable percentages of the damage dealt to other limbs is actually translated to also damaging the main or body health pool for enemies. So, when it comes to weapons that inflict the burning status like this, you want to typically be aiming for the center mass on your foes to ensure the damage of all of it goes to the same place when possible. This is also, of course, going to make our breakpoints absurdly complicated when we get there, but I'll do my best. Ammo wise, as I said, you get 60 shells in reserve and 17 loaded with an internal capacity of 16 when starting the mission. Resupplying the cookout does thankfully enjoy the same quality of life buff the Slugger and Punisher received long ago, where one resupply box will refill your entire reserve of 60 shells, and field crates 30 shells. Ammo economy wise, if you make sure to let your targets cook for the additional fire damage without overcommitting additional shells, you'll find the cookout has enough charcoal to last the whole barbecue. But in situations when you are forced to forego that additional fire damage and slam on the trigger, you will run out of ammo very quickly. The crowd control of the cookout is thankfully quite high, sporting 30 stagger force and 25 pushing force. This weapon has no trouble keeping the enemies of democracy at bay, allowing you to better control the battlefield and keep enemies away from you while they burn to a crisp, unable to make any ground towards you, which feels fantastic for an incinerate primary to have. The damage and physical drop off of the weapon's shells is quite noticeable and very significant. As I said, you are going to want to keep your targets within no more than 20 meters of you to remain effective, and we will quickly lose up to 20 ballistic damage due to fall off very quickly at any range beyond point blank due to each individual pellet rounding down by one. This is also true for your durable damage, which makes the weapon very weak as far as ballistics are concerned against durable targets. Remember that the game's scuffed fall off system rounding down can be countered to some degree by moving towards the target, and backpedaling away from the target will see a reduction in overall damage due to fall off. So, charge forward without fear, Helldivers. I talk all about this unfortunate interaction with fall off and momentum in this video, which I'll leave a link to down below. Last but certainly not least, let's talk about the damage the cookout brings to the table. The cookout fires 20 pellets that all deal 16 ballistic damage, and here's the big weak point of the weapon: three. Yes, three durable damage per pellet, bringing its total damage per pull of the trigger up to 320 ballistic and only 60 durable damage, which is obviously pretty bad when the Punisher deals 405 ballistic damage and 108 durable damage. But wait, we still have to account for the fire damage we bring to the table, assuming that you are aiming at the target's main health pool or body and then allowing the cookout to, well, cook the target for the full 2.4 seconds after you hit it with the shell, we get a theoretical damage per shell of 320 ballistic damage, 60 durable damage, and 134 fire damage when hitting the body, for a more respectable total of 454 ballistic damage and 127 durable damage, as fire deals half the amount of damage in durable. So, a bit confusing, isn't it? Don't worry, it's going to get worse, but the takeaway here should be that you want to aim for center mass, let your enemies cook after you slam them with a shell, swap targets, and revisit that original target 3 seconds later if it's still up should it have survived the burning damage to hit it one more time. This is going to dramatically increase the effective DPS of the weapon, as it will scale with the number of targets that you manage to inflict with the burn at the same time, quite heavily in a way that ballistic weapons simply cannot, making it an extremely ideal horde clearing solution. Well, that is assuming that Horde is only sporting light armor or less, as the penetration value of the ballista portion of our damage is only 2 or light penetrating, while the fire damage is AP4 or light vehicle penetrating. This can make it very awkward to tackle any targets above armor class 2 reliably with this weapon, and even when it comes to light armored enemies, the ballistic damage is going to be halved at the very least, followed by some very poor durable damage should the enemy have a high percentage of durability as well. If any of these terms were confusing to you, don't worry, I've got you covered in my video titled How Damage Works. I'll leave a link to it in the description below, as Arrowhead tells you maybe half the information that you need to know about the damage enemies take at best within the game itself, but this video will open the book and give you all the information that you need. All right, that does it for our technical specifications. So, how about those damage breakpoints? Well, the breakpoints we're going to be displaying today will be in two forms. One, number of shots to kill value will be based on if you just keep hammering the trigger on the target against their best weak point, while the other will be based on aiming for center mass and allowing the target to burn for the full duration if the debuff is inflicted. This will give you a good idea of how much more ammo you conserve with option B, while informing you how much ammo you'll need to spend in excess when pushed into a situation where you are forced to pour on the gas. Make sense? Great. Let's do it. Starting off for the Terminids, as everyone loves a good shrimp on the Barbie, the scavengers in all forms, as well as hunters and shriekers, will go down should they catch even one shell from the cookout anywhere on their bodies. And even if they should catch even a single pellet from your shell, the burning effect will be enough to remove these threats all on its own. So make sure to try and hit as many individual targets with the spread of the shell as possible. And don't be too concerned with how many individual pellets actually land when it comes to these enemies. The warriors are the first enemy that stands a chance against the Incend Punisher, Cookout. However, one shell to the face will be good night for them, sending them into a mad charge towards you as they rapidly bleed out. While one body shot will also bring them down just 5 to 25 damage away from death, leaving them to burn out nearly instantly afterwards. Hitting two-thirds of your pellets on a warrior's body, then allowing it to burn out for the next few seconds, will also always result in a kill. So use this method interchangeably with popping their heads if you'd rather avoid the death charge that they do, especially when it comes to the Alpha Commander's warriors. Speaking of the Alpha Commanders, this is a very tough customer for the cookout. These things are very tanky and have a lot of durable percentage in every part as well as light armor, so the cookout is going to need to hit 4 full shots to the head to decapitate this monster, sending it into a terminal bleed out. This is going to be much more efficient than attempting to utilize the fire damage over time effect on the body, as it's extremely tanky to both the ballistic and fire damage of the weapon, soaking up to 8 shots with the full fire damage being allowed to burn between each shot. When it comes to the commanders, you are going to want to just keep slamming their head with shells as if you were using a slugger or punisher, and ignore your fire damage entirely, unfortunately. The Hive Guards are a pretty mediocre enemy to kill using the cookout. They can be killed in just one good solid point blank blast at their little mouths, or brought down from the burning damage method after one shot, letting it burn, and then one more for the road against its body. Considering we heavily stagger these as well, they kind of just fade in with the pack when you're spraying it down, trying to apply as many damage over time effects as possible, which is great. Bile spewers are a very serious threat on the Terminid front, as their heads are small enough that it's difficult to smash an entire shell worth of pellets into the lower jaw of the spewer, where its lack of armor should allow you to actually bring it down in just 2 or more realistically 3 shots. The top of the head is, of course, medium class 3 armor, making it invulnerable to the cookout, same as the back plating. The squishy part of its main body, which receives our burning damage, will take 3 good shots should you let it burn for the full duration of our damage over time effect in between each hit. Which honestly isn't too difficult to do considering we do heavily stagger these out of their spitting animations, allowing us to control the situation very handedly while taking on packs of these. Stalkers are handled extremely well by the cookout, going down to one good headshot should even half of your pellets land in it, but more realistically, one shot to stagger the beast with a follow up grouping around the head is going to be your average experience. If you do attempt to bring down the stalker through just the body, it's going to take you 5 rounds of searing it with your burning damage, which is likely not going to be really worth it for the most part. Best to just slam 2 shells towards its head and be done with it, especially because you are likely dealing with 3 of its flatmates at the same time. Overall, a great performance here and a much needed win for the weapon against one of the most lethal of the Terminids. The cookout is sadly extremely bad at killing charges of all sizes due to the very high durability percentage on their rears, and the cookout, of course, doing very bad durable damage. This is doubled down on by the fact our fire damage is not ticking against the rear health pool, it's attempting to tick against the armor class 5 core of the charger with 1800 health, making it completely nullified, giving us a straight up worse performance when attempting to pop this portion of the body to cause a bleed out than every other weapon in its class. Obviously, this isn't a deal breaker for the cookout, as your primary doesn't need to be a good charger killer to be a good weapon after all. The Blitzer is a fantastic gun against bugs, for example, but the amount of shots this takes, if I were to quantify it numerically, would be the word bad. Bile Titans are, of course, a no for the cookout, as any balanced primary would say the same. The sacks on the bottom can be popped eventually, but only sustaining 60 damage per pull of the trigger to each 500 HP sack is going to see this take 9 shots to pull off each, and still leaves the Titan with an internal 2500 health remaining. Basically, leave this to the big guns as per usual, as the fire damage over time is also completely nullified by the armor class 5 core of the Titan. Even if you see this thing burning, it is definitely not actually taking damage whatsoever. Now, finally, we have the Impaler, the new cut of meat on the block, but can the cookout make it well done? Through the head hitbox, you can eventually bring the Impaler down with the cookout, but it will take you a lot of shells and is far from the fastest option for getting rid of these guys, taking 14 shells at a minimum to bring the beast down. As you would expect, the fire damage over time effect is, of course, also nullified by its core, class 5 armor, making the burning damage completely useless here. Overall, a very weak option for this Impaler clear, but you can do it. That does it for the Terminids, and you might have expected if you are familiar with my breakdown series, we are going to be giving the automatons a no out of 10 rating and leaving it at that. It's not my intention to ever waste my audience's time and going over how weak this new fire shotgun is against bots when it's common knowledge that fire weapons and pellets from shotguns as a whole are just not a good option against them would not be fruitful for either of us. So, bring it to the Western Front at your own peril, as it is just not what you want over there, and you can do way better than that, I guarantee you. All right, so that will do it for my breakdown of the SG-451 Cookout, but how good is it really? Well, in my opinion, it's a solid, but overall only barely above middle of the pack pick when it comes to the Eastern Front. The crowd control capability able to lock down hordes of weaker bugs, letting them burn out, is its claim to fame, but it is nothing other weapons cannot already accomplish to some degree. The novelty of the burning damage over time suffers greatly against durable enemies, which is a double whammy for the weapon, as its durable damage of only 3 per pellet leaves it with extremely weak TTKs for any of the medium bugs, which are numerous in difficulty 10. Not to mention dealing only half damage against these targets with its ballistics due to only having light penetration. Setting hordes of bugs on fire is great fun, and the sound design for the weapon is excellent. And the ability to invalidate the reload time is quite powerful, allowing for an endless stream of fire till you run empty. Problem is, you're gonna run empty, as every medium enemy chips away at your overall low ammo capacity. This can be rectified pretty easily with the ammo pickups giving you loads of your shells back, of course, but you will need to scavenge for ammo often if you are facing off against large amounts of medium bugs. Overall, I still do enjoy the cookout and will likely bring it along with me for 20-minute rocket missions where the blitzer actually suffers a lot from the corpses piling up. Overall, I award the cookout a 6 out of 10 against difficulty 10 Terminids and a no out of 10 for the bots. I'm still probably going to be utilizing the cookout all day tomorrow on stream, where I'm sure me and my viewers will be running the full fire meme loadouts all day. Thank you for watching till the end, and have a wonderful day. I'll see you next time.
And now, another helpful tip from General Brash.
Aerovin has hosted one of the most democratic cookouts the galaxy has ever seen. For this, I'm ordering all active Helldivers to like, comment, and subscribe to his channel. Failure to do so will see you not invited to the SEAF barbecue this year.
Brash tactics. Use them or die trying.